Today we're going to be looking at Task 4, Activity 3 of Managing Our Money, which is on Land and Buildings Transaction Tax. Land and Buildings Tax is a Scotland-only tax that is paid when buying property or a piece of land. The amount of tax you pay depends on how much the property or land is worth. Now, there are different rules depending on whether it's your first house, an additional property, whether it's a business property, and all these kind of things. There's a link at the end of the video that I'm going to ask you to have a look at, which gives you a bit more detail around that. In this video, we're going to concentrate on buying your own home that you'll be living in, because that's the most common situation. Okay. Here are the bands that you can pay tax within. So up to £145,000, there's no tax to pay. That can be thought of as your tax-free allowance. Above £145,000 to £250,000, you would pay 2%. Above £250,000 to £325,000, you'd pay 5%. So that's where most properties are kind of around about there. If you're getting into more expensive properties as well, above 325 through to 750,000, you'd be paying 10%, and then over 750,000, you'd pay 12%. Okay, so that allows different amounts in the bands. So what that means is that if you had a property that was in the band and was looking at between 250 to 325,000, you'd be paying 0% for the first £145,000 worth of value, 2% for the next 105,000, and then you'd only be paying 5% on anything above the 250 up to the price of the property, if it was within this band here. So you're not going to end up paying 5% for the whole amount, only for the bit within that band. So, a couple of examples. First one, Sharon's purchased a house for £185,000. How much land and buildings tax will she have to pay? So the property price is £185,000. She has £145,000 tax-free allowance, and she'll be paying tax on £40,000. And that's at the first rate, which is 2%. So 2% of £40,000 is 2 divided by 100 times 40,000 is £800. So in that one, that's not too bad, but that does mean that you have to factor that in when you're looking to buy the house. So as well as buying the house for the £185,000, you'll have your land and building transaction tax of £800 and your solicitor's fees, which are normally a couple of £1,000s. Okay, in this second example, Greg has purchased a house for £270,000. How much land and buildings transaction tax will he have to pay? So, purchase price is £270,000. He gets his £145,000 tax free. He goes over the £105,000 jump to the next band, so he builds up the whole 2% band, and then there's £20,000 which goes into the 5% band. So he'll be paying tax on his £105,000 and his £20,000. So 2% of £105,000 is 2 divided by 100 times £105,000, which is £2,100. And then 5% of £20,000 is 5 divided by 100 times 20,000, which is £1,000. So the total tax he's going to have to pay is the £2,100 plus 1,000 from the 5% band. So a total of £3,100. So that's beginning to add up now. In this final example, Mandy has purchased a house for £315,000. So how much land and buildings transaction tax will she have to pay? So the purchase price is £315,000, so it's going to fall into the same brackets as Greg's in the previous example. So she's got £145,000 tax free. She fills up the whole 2% band up to £250,000 with that £105,000 there. And then she's got £65,000 in the 5% band. And we'll see in a second that's going to make quite a big difference. So we're paying tax on £105,000 at 2% and £65,000 at 5%. So 2% of £105,000 is £2,100, the same as it was previously. 5% of £65,000 is 5 divided by 100 times 65,000, which is £3,250. Total together, that gives us £5,350. So that's now nearly £5,500 extra on top of the purchase price. It's beginning to make a really big difference to the price of the property. Okay, what we'd like you to do for today's exercise is explore that website there. So that is revenue.scot/land building transaction tax. That'll give you a lot of information. It'll give you a bit more detail about the second homes and the business rates that we talked about at the start. And then I'd like you to go into your booklet and complete task 4, activity 3. Thank you.